Imagine a scene where the call to arms echoes across the vast prairie, a desperate plea for help against the dreaded Comanche. The brave men of Texas, from all walks of life, heed the call and gather their guns and horses to fight for their homes and families. Plum Creek Confrontation, or the Battle of Plum Creek, is a historic event that marked a turning point in the history of Texas. 2 miles south of town, along the wooded banks of Plum Creek, a small group of volunteers defeated over 600 Comanche and Kiowa warriors from the Great Comanche Raid of 1840. Volunteers, militia, and Texas Rangers responded to the call from Gonzales, Seguin, San Antonio, Austin, Bastrop, Goliad, Victoria, and Grange, as well as scattered homesteads throughout central Texas. What happened on that dreadful day? In early August 1840, under the silvery light of a brilliant full moon, known as a Comanche moon by early Texas settlers, a war party of over 600 Comanche and Kiowa warriors swept out of the Comanche area and rode for the heart of the Republic of Texas. The massive raid was launched in retaliation for what the Comanches perceived to be the unprovoked killing of 12 Pentecost war chiefs and many innocent women and children at the Council House peace talks in San Antonio. Buffalo Hump, one of the few surviving Pentecost war chiefs, led the Comanches in the raid. Instead of bypassing Victoria, he convinced his warriors to surround the town and launched an attack that overran the settlement. Most of the citizens saved themselves by banding together and forming up in the southern part of town, but 15 people, including 7 slaves, were killed and scalped by the Comanches. How did the small group of volunteers manage to defeat more than 600 Comanche and Kiowa warriors in the Battle of Plum Creek? The Texas defenders managed to keep the Indians from reaching the downtown section, but they had to be content with looting the outskirts and making off with a huge herd of horses. The raiders moved on to the port village of Linville, where most of the inhabitants managed to escape to the bay in boats. From here, they watched in horror as the Comanches butchered a few unfortunate stragglers. Word of the attack was racing through the settlements, and volunteer forces from around the area were gathering for an attack of their own. Ben McCulloch gathered up 24 volunteers from Gonzales and joined up with John J. Tumlinson's force of 100 militiamen. Other groups led by Adam Zumwalt and Clark Owen were also involved in the action. The Texans' first encounter with the raiders occurred on August 9, 1840, at the Casablanca River crossing. After a heated battle, one Texan was killed. Despite objections from McCulloch, Tumlinson decided to withdraw and wait for reinforcements to arrive. Finally, Edward Burleson's militia force arrived with a group of Tonkoa scouts led by Chief Placido. The scouts traveled on foot for 30 miles, running alongside the militia's horses. Burleson's plan was to attack the Comanches at Plum Creek. Did they succeed? When they arrived at the creek, they found 117 men from Gonzales waiting for the Comanches. These men were led by Matthew Caldwell and Captain James Bird. Later, more soldiers arrived from Port Lavaca, and Jack Hayes brought in a company from Baxar. About 200 strong, this was reported as the largest group of militia gathered in one place since the Texas Revolution. Gen. Felix Houston arrived and took over sole command of the unit. The trap was set. As the Comanches continued their ride north, they soon found themselves confronting a long line of vengeful Texans. The battle began on August 12, 1840. According to some witnesses, a brave warrior who seemed to have his own magical way of avoiding the Texans' bullets led the Comanches. Adorned with loot from the raid, he charged toward the militia until his tall silk hat and silk umbrella were completely shot away. The grim frontiersmen were impressed with the bravery of the Indians and were astonished at the way they seemed to dodge their bullets. The Comanche leader was finally killed, and the others retreated in the face of a ferocious Texan charge into the main formation of the Indians. After the smoke had cleared, 87 of the Comanche raiders lay dead. The Texans lost only 1 man, with 7 being wounded. The Comanche raid on the South Texas coast has long been regarded as the last great Indian raid. The Texans hoped that their victory at Plum Creek would teach the Comanches a lesson and put an end to raids on Texas settlements. However, this was wishful thinking, as the Indians would continue with smaller lightning-fast raids along the border from Gonzales to the northern settlements. The conflict with the tenacious Comanche would last several decades. History is not merciful to everyone. What can we learn from the Great Comanche Raid about the history of conflict between Native Americans and settlers in the United States?